What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for NFL Week 3 Final Look.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to go over each position and break down a couple of my favorite players for this NFL DFS Week 3 main slate. And if you stay to the very end after all my picks and after I show you the Draft Dashboard tools, I'll give you my super secret sleeper pick that no one's talking about. Oh, and after our sleeper pick, click the video in the middle of the screen to continue getting more DFS picks for NFL Week 3. Okay, let's take a look at the quarterback position. So I like Lamar Jackson, I like Dak Prescott, but a guy that I think is going under-owned here in Week 3 is Tom Brady. Yeah, the guy who turned off this Thursday night game because of all the penalties. When Tom Brady gets fired up, it usually translates to points on the field. From the New England Patriots playing the New York Jets, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they're middle-of-the-pack defending opposing fantasy quarterbacks. Tom Brady has scored 25 and 29 fantasy points in the last 2 games, averaging 26.7 fantasy points per game on the season. He rushed the ball twice last game, a rare touchdown by Tom Brady on the ground. He's only going to be 1% owned. He's been under-owned both weeks so far, overperforming his expectations. He's $6,600 DraftKings salary and $1,200 more on FanDuel. He's projected at 20.9 fantasy points here in Week 3. This is a home game for Tom Brady. He's got a new toy in Antonio Brown that he's going to want to play with. This is like practice on the field for that guy. Antonio Brown was only on the field for 17% of the snaps last week, but you can be sure he's going to get more work here in Week 3. So I like Tom Brady here versus the New York Jets. Okay, moving down in salary, I like Josh Allen from the Buffalo Bills playing the Cincinnati Bengals, who have the 5th worst defense overall and give up the 9th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Josh Allen has scored 22 and 20 fantasy points in the first 2 weeks of the season. He had 7 rush attempts last game and 10 the first game. He's going to be right around 7% owned, and he's only $5,900 DraftKings salary. He's $1,600 more on FanDuel, projected at 18.9 fantasy points here in Week 3. This is a home game for Josh Allen, and I feel like we're picking him every week because of his rushing upside. This guy can get you 80 yards on the ground, so he doesn't need to do much in the passing game to have a good fantasy night. His salary's low, so this is a nice value play at quarterback. You can run naked Josh Allen. You don't have to pair him up with any of his wide receivers because he's a threat in the red zone, and he's found the end zone in both games of the season so far. So I like Josh Allen here versus a weak Cincinnati Bengals defense.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching.
If you want to enter the drawing for $100 PayPal,
all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won.
And then we'll send you $100 PayPal.
So it's that easy?
And we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video.
So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Okay, who do we have at the running back position? I want to spend up here at running back. I like Ezekiel Elliott from the Dallas Cowboys playing the Miami Dolphins, who have the absolute worst defense overall, and they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Ezekiel Elliott scored 23 fantasy points last game. He had 22 rush attempts and 2 pass targets. So he's back to getting a full load. He's going to be around 23% owned this week, but I think he's a chalk play that you're going to want to have in some of your lineups. Ezekiel Elliott is $8,900 DraftKings salary. He's $100 less on FanDuel. He's projected at 22.5 fantasy points here in Week 3. This is a home game for Zeke. He's got a fantastic matchup versus the Miami Dolphins, a plus game script in a game they're heavily favored. So I like Ezekiel Elliott running all over the Miami Dolphins here in week 3. Okay, coming down in salary just a little bit here. I don't want to take many chances here at running back because there's plenty of opportunities to save salary over there at the wide receiver position. So I like Dalvin Cook from the Minnesota Vikings playing the Oakland Raiders, who have the 7th worst defense overall, and so far they've been pretty good against opposing running backs. But Dalvin Cook has scored 29 and 31 fantasy points in his first 2 games of the season. He's averaging 20.5 rushes per game and 2.5 pass targets per game. He's going to be around 19% owned. He's been on the field for 70% of the snaps, and he touches the ball 55% of that time. So outstanding usage numbers at the running back position, and Dalvin Cook is projected at 19.8 fantasy points here in week 3. He's $7,800 DraftKings salary and $500 more on FanDuel. This is a home game for Dalvin Cook, and it should be a high-scoring game versus Oakland. So I like Dalvin Cook here versus the Oakland Raiders. Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all the tools for NFL, MLB is still going, NBA is right around the corner. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups. Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver position. This is where your value is going to be. Plenty of mid-ranged wide receivers that are in great spots this week. So I like Chris Godwin from the Tampa Bay Bucks playing the New York Giants, who have the 3rd worst defense overall, and they give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Chris Godwin has scored 14 and 29 fantasy points in his first 2 games of the season. He got 9 pass targets last game, averaging 7.5 pass targets per game. He's going to be around 9% owned, and he's on the field for 93% of the snaps, and he touches the ball 12% of that time. So he's plenty involved in this offense. He's got a great matchup this week. He's $6,900 DraftKings salary and $700 more on FanDuel. He's projected at 16.9 fantasy points here in week 3. And this is a home game for Chris Godwin. You just hope the Giants can keep this game competitive, but with Saquon Barkley, I think they can do just enough to keep Chris Godwin active. So I like Chris Godwin here versus the New York Giants. Another wide receiver I really like this week is Kenny Golladay from the Detroit Lions playing the Philadelphia Eagles, who have the 6th worst defense overall, and they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Kenny Golladay scored 29 fantasy points last week off of 10 pass targets. He's averaging 21.5 fantasy points per game on the season. He got 9 targets in week 1, and he's only projected to be around 6% owned this week. He's been on the field for 95% of the snaps, and he's touched the ball 13% of that time. So nice volume, excellent production. He's projected at 16 fantasy points here in week 3. He's $6,600 DraftKings salary and $400 more on FanDuel. This is one of my favorite players to target here in week 3. I think the ownership is way too low for the volume and production that this guy is giving us. He's got a fantastic matchup this week, so I like Kenny Golladay here versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, moving on to the tight end position. I like George Kittel from the San Francisco 49ers playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have the 2nd worst defense overall, and they give up the 9th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. George Kittel has scored 8 and 13 fantasy points in his first 2 games of the season. He got 10 pass targets the first game, but only 3 pass targets last game. So that's a little bit discouraging. It brought his ownership down here. He's only projected to be around 8% owned, but he's been on the field for 79% of the snaps, and touched the ball 12% of that time. So those numbers can come up here in week 3. He should be much more involved in this game plan. He's projected at 15 fantasy points here in week 3. He's 5,600 DraftKings salary, and he's 1,000 more on FanDuel. This is a home game for George Kittle. He's got something to prove here as one of the league's premier tight ends. He hasn't had a ton of fantasy production so far, but I think this is going to be a breakout game, so I like George Kittle here versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay, another tight end that I'm targeting this week is Zach Ertz from the Philadelphia Eagles playing the Detroit Lions, who have the 11th worst defense overall, and they've been pretty good versus tight ends so far this season. But Zach Ertz has scored 10 and 17 fantasy points off of 7 and 16 targets last week. The Eagles are obliterated at the wide receiver position, so Zach Ertz might get upwards of 15 targets again this week. The sky is the limit because they really don't have many other players to throw the ball to. He's going to be around 20% owned this week. He's been on the field for 92% of the snaps, and he's touched the ball 16% of that time. He's projected at 16.1 fantasy points here in week 3. He's 5,700 DraftKings salary and 1,200 more on FanDuel. This is a home game for Zach Ertz. Should be a competitive game, so they should be passing the ball all the way down to the end. Zach Ertz could have multiple touchdowns here this week, so I like Zach Ertz here versus the Detroit Lions.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video.
You've unlocked the bonus content. My super secret sleeper pick for week 3 is Deebo Samuel from the San Francisco 49ers playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have the 2nd worst defense overall, and they give up the 4th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Deebo Samuel has scored 6 and 20 fantasy points off of 3 and 7 targets last week. He even rushed the ball twice last week. He's only going to be around 2% owned, so super low ownership. He's been on the field for 64% of the snaps, and he's touched the ball 13% of that time. He's projected at 11 fantasy points here in week 3. He's only 4,500 DraftKings salary and 1,000 more on FanDuel. This is a home game for Deebo Samuel, who could end up being the top target for Jimmy Garoppolo. Dante Pettis and Marquise Goodwin, these guys are all vying for the number 1 spot. I think Deebo Samuel is a young rookie, just as good as those other guys, and I think he builds on a great fantasy game that he had last week, so I like Deebo Samuel here versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smiggity smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NFL slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck. Do you want more DFS picks for NFL Week 3? Check out the video linked right in the middle of the screen. Tap that video to continue getting our Week 3 DFS picks. That's right, just go ahead and tap that video right in the middle of the screen, and you're going to get more of our DFS picks for Week 3 NFL Daily Fantasy Football. Good luck, everyone, and thanks again for watching.